Zone-sama, famous for their countless parodies, also lent their skills to mainstream animation like OKKO. Masami Obari is just as well known for being, let's just say, incredibly cultured, as he is for the Fatal Fury movie and recent Chun-Li and Mai Shiranui animation. And Speederoo, yes, Speederoo is an artist whose work often sparks that "I've seen that style somewhere before" comment almost every time his animations come up, all while creating the beloved series Punch Punch Forever. Even some of Castlevania's key animators came from the adult industry. I mean, how else are you gonna render those goddamn gorgeous animations of bodies in motion? All of these artists, let's just say, have spicy resumes, but they all share one thing in common: an acute understanding of the importance of gorgeous, eye-catching animation. And if you've spent more than 5 minutes on the internet recently, you've probably seen those Invincible teasers so polished you'd swear an entirely different team was behind them. Especially with One Punch Man's abysmal animation in its 3rd season reminding people of Invincible's PNG animation, leading to some pretty hilarious memes. Well, my astute viewers, you'll be surprised to know that yes, they were indeed animated by an entirely different team. And as my thumbnail would imply, yes, the same people who animated such animated classics as Slayer, a collection of videos of Maxine voiced by and based on Double Maximus, Peepidoo, and the Super Friends, and let's just say an entire goddamn hard drive's worth of content on the that just showing on here for any longer than a second would get me nuked off of YouTube again. But when the new Invincible teaser dropped last month, featuring Adam, Eve, and Mark once again rendered with that gorgeous, hyper-polished animation and perfectly matched mouth motion that could have only come from that team of absolute degenerates in France, fans immediately started asking the same question all over again. Why doesn't Amazon just hire these guys full-time? Why can't the whole show look like this, instead of how the current episodes look like a high school PowerPoint presentation? Well, today we're diving into why Invincible can't simply hand the keys over to Bobby Pills, and by extension, the infamous Balak, the studio and man known for insanely fluid animation, unhinged character acting, and as mentioned before, creating the kind of content that makes your parents knock before entering your room. And the answer, like most things in life, is kind of a bummer, but incredibly realistic when you realize just how much animators are brutalized in the industry. The first thing to understand is that people forget that teasers are not the show, like a brand new video game being shown off at an event that uses pre-rendered CGI animation. It's an illusion meant to hype you up. It's why they often include those captions below now saying that the teaser uses the in-game engine. They are fully allowed to lie to you. That's just the nature of teasers. They're meant to be hot, flashy, over the top, and stylish enough to break Twitter and make people talk about the show or game. A teaser basically functions like the animated equivalent of somebody posting thirst traps. That's not what they look like 24/7, and Bobby Pills is basically the king of thirst trap animation if you know them well enough. Quick reminder, a like and a comment go a long way in helping this video reach the algorithm. And if you want to see more non-has-been related videos from me, let me know by dropping a like. Also, let me know below what you think. Should they try and get those animators on the team, or no? But a 2-minute masterpiece in animation is entirely different from an entire season logistically. While Balak can render some pretty impressive animations on his own, and Bobby Pills really puts in the work for shorts like Peepidoo, those are usually short productions that put a lot of emphasis on certain animations to give those shorts a lot of punch. Realistically, when they're shifted over to a longer show, the animation quality realistically drops with it. Even when people bring up one example where Bobby Pills did animate an entire show, Captain Laserhawk, it actually proves the point even harder. Yes, it looked fantastic stylistically, full of that signature Bobby Pills edge and visual polish of any Adi Shankar show. Fuck you, Castlevania Nocturne was gorgeously animated, but the animation itself wasn't ultra fluid and heavily detailed like their shorts. And that wasn't because the studio and Balak forgot how to animate, it was because they were working under tight deadlines and full series production constraints. Captain Laserhawk shows that even when Bobby Pills takes on a long-form project, the reality of TV schedule production forces them to tone down the insanity and work like a normal studio would. So imagine multiplying that by the scale of Invincible, a show that releases almost yearly. Even for them, it's a completely different beast. And now I know what you're probably thinking, and I thought the same myself. Well, Smiling Friends has amazing animation every season because they hire individual talent for key shots. And yes, absolutely, they bring in heavy-hitting freelancers that create some top-notch animation for single scenes, and that's a huge part of the show's charm. But here's the difference. Smiling Friends is 10 minutes an episode. They can save their best animation for tiny bursts of insanity because the show is designed around short, punchy moments, not sustained multi-minute fight choreography and scenes of realistically animated talking. A lot of the in-between animation is pretty basic, very much in line with everything that Bento Box would normally produce. And look, as much as I clown on Zach and Michael for being absolute hack frauds who still haven't tried to write women into the show as more than just gags, seriously, why was Marge completely written out of Glep's episode within the first couple minutes? And give Charlie's girlfriend Zoe a 2-second scene at the end of the final episode? Also, Charlie being a bad boyfriend wasn't on my bingo card for season 3 of Smiling Friends. But my complaints aside, it's because their money goes where their appeal is. Animation. Like Invincible, they also have to pay for voice talent. And trust me, that eats a massive chunk of the budget.
This is the truth. We were going to get Chris Chan. Production people came to us and said, well, look, there's like rules that say you can't just get somebody to do like a one-line cameo. Well, look, we've already done the Chills cameo. We can't do that twice just for budgetary reasons. If we get this person, they're going to have to be in like 2 other episodes and do other characters. We're like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. Like, it doesn't work. It's not funny that way. So, it literally just ended up being like a budget thing. It had nothing to do with anything.
That's sadly why Charlie's girlfriend Zoe only gets 1 line. It's expensive. It's also why so many characters are voiced by Zach and Michael themselves. They simply can't afford to bring in a big roster of actors when the bulk of their budget is going toward animation and comedy, which is the show's main real priority. But the difference is that Smiling Friends can funnel what's left directly into stylized chaos and visuals. Invincible, on the other hand, has to stretch its budget over 45-minute episodes, A-list Hollywood actors who probably cost more than a single Smiling Friends season, which is a whole other can of worms other video essayists have talked about before. But hey, silver lining time. And this one actually just came up in the news. At least Aaron Paul, yes, that Aaron Paul from BoJack Horseman, Breaking Bad, and Need for Speed. Jesus, does anyone actually remember that movie? Anyway, he dropped out of the voice role for Powerplex. It's a bummer for sure, but it'll probably free up a good chunk of the budget for the next season. And honestly, turns out Aaron Paul is just tired of playing traumatized characters.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Which, honestly, fair enough, man. However, it still won't stop me from wishing they could sneak Balak into the seasonal budget to just freelance animate a scene from home while he works on his French cartoons. This ties to the next big reason. Invincible's budget is not what people think. Fans hear Amazon and assume Jeff Bezos is personally handing them billions of dollars to animate. In an ideal world, that would be the case. But no, that's not the case.
In a perfect world, men like me would not exist. But this is not a perfect world.
Additionally, most of their cash is already tied up to voice acting, because half of the actors in Hollywood are currently working on the show for some godforsaken reason. And although some action scenes are gorgeous, Invincible sometimes looks like it's being animated by seasonal workers who were just hired on their lunch break to animate. This isn't because the animators are lazy, it's because the production simply doesn't have the funds to pump every quiet conversation scene with full fluid motion, complex shading, and 20 layers of background animation. Animation is expensive. The phrase, "we'll fix it in post," literally translates to, "we'll go bankrupt in post." So the show has to save its animation money for the money shots and finales. Because if there's one place you want the budget to go, it's the part people online can hype up like a 2000s Dragon Ball Z AMV set to Linkin Park. Holy shit, am I showing my age. But yeah, long-form television animation requires a studio that can handle endless scheduling spreadsheets, multiple teams working on different episodes simultaneously, and the ability to maintain visual consistency for years. Bobby Pills currently thrives on chaos and creativity, not exactly consistency. Asking them to animate the whole show would be like asking a Michelin star chef to run a 24-hour McDonald's. They could do it, but they would despise every living moment, and the restaurant would probably explode. The Invincible team already built a long-term pipeline with Skybound Animation and Wind Sun Sky. These studios know how to handle volume, deadlines, revisions, and logistical nightmares of voice actors recording in different countries, scenes. Even if Bobby Pills wanted to tag in, which they probably don't, integrating them into the pipeline would mean throwing away years of production infrastructure, and nothing says delays like rebuilding an animation pipeline in the middle of a season. So now we get to the real blunt final answer. Why does Invincible use Bobby Pills just for teasers? Because as I mentioned before, teasers are supposed to look like expensive candy on display. They're supposed to blow your mind, they're supposed to get millions of views, they're supposed to convince normies the show is about to melt your brain with quality, even when action isn't happening on screen. Teasers are a luxury animation. The main show is mass animation. These two things cannot be the same unless Amazon starts spending like they were handed Dubai blood money. But as I mentioned, we can only hope that one day they might hire Balak and his team to freelance animate some of the key animations like fights, because I feel that could add to a lot of the hype in the series. But unfortunately, the studios in charge are relatively new and are actually pretty inexperienced with switching up and changing the infrastructure of their production. It's a miracle the show actually comes out looking as good as it does, with having some pretty good moments of animation. So no, unfortunately Invincible can't just hire the corn animators, not because they don't want to, not because they're stupid and think corn animators will ruin shows like some dumbass commenters think, but because TV animation is a monster that eats time, money, workers, and sanity for breakfast. Well, what do you think? Would it be wise if they somehow got some freelance animators to work on the hype scenes in the show? Regardless, see you next week.